Hi everyone, this is Milagros from Thank You Plant Medicine. Today I bring to you this amazing conversation that was part of our live panel of the Thank You Plant Medicine Day, where you are going to hear some perspectives about places, preparation, integration, and other very important aspects you need to consider when choosing a retreat center or a plant medicine facilitator. You are going to hear this from those who are in the front lines of bringing the medicine to the people, the leaders of some of the most prestigious retreat centers. In my experience, it is super important to choose wisely where and with whom to have a plant medicine or psychedelic experience. So this video is really helpful for those who are seeking to experience with these amazing substances. In this panel, we also had Thomas Hartle speaking, who is a cancer survivor and the first person in Canada who legally used psilocybin to treat his end-of-life anxiety, and his experience is super important for us to listen. The moderator of this panel was Cameron Benhouse from Retreat Guru. That is a website where you can search for retreat centers and you can read about people's experiences and the ratings that they put to each retreat center. So it's really a really helpful website for people who are seeking to go to retreats all over the world. So I really hope you enjoyed this video.
So thank you everybody, and it's wonderful to be on a panel. We've got some great panelists here today, and this is the Thank You Plant Medicine panel for bringing the medicines to the people. And we have the bringers and we have the people here on this call, which is great. I'd love to introduce Thomas Hartle. He's a 53-year-old husband, father, and 5-year stage 4 cancer survivor. Thomas has spent the last 27 years working as an IT professional until he was forced to focus on his health in 2019. And he is actually the first person in Canada to legally use psilocybin to treat his end-of-life anxiety. So welcome, Thomas.
Nice to be here.
And then I'd like to introduce Jacobien van der Weyden. She has been in service of the psychedelic renaissance since 2003, while she's been working for several organizations in the psychedelic space. She's the director of customer journey and support at Synthesis Retreat, and she's the co-founder of Microdosing Institute. Welcome, Jacobien.
Hi, great to be here.
And I'd like to introduce Carlos Tanner. He's from the United States, has degrees in both art and philosophy. He moved to Iquitos, Peru in 2004, and he lived with his first teacher for 4 years before creating the Ayahuasca Foundation in 2008. He organizes healing retreats and educational courses led by authentic Shipibo curanderos in the Amazon rainforest. The Ayahuasca Foundation also hosts medical research conducted by a team of doctors to investigate the effectiveness of ayahuasca plant medicine tradition in its natural setting. So welcome, Carlos. And last but not least, Melissa Stangl. After years of spending years working in scientific labs and corporate offices, Melissa realized the healing and transformative potential of working responsibly with psychedelics and plant medicine. In 2015, she consciously chose to leave corporate America, good choice, and move to live and work in the Amazon jungle. She's since used her background in engineering, science, and management to help advance the plant medicine and psychedelic movement. Welcome, Melissa.
Thanks for having me, Cameron.
It's so nice to have you all here. So what are we doing today? We're talking about bringing the medicines to the people. I think, for every transformational journey that we experience, it often happens not alone, but it's in context. It's at a center, or it's at a location. And in order for that to be effective, it needs to be safe. And we're starting to see hundreds, if not thousands, of centers pop up offering plant medicines in the world, which is also a wonderful thing because, there's a psychedelic renaissance that's happening right now. At the same time, this panel wants to explore, like, what is the landscape? What kind of retreat centers are there out there? And then what are some considerations that if you're new to plant medicine or if you're not new, how do you navigate that? And we hope to cover, topics like, how do I prepare for a retreat? How do I integrate an experience? What would be some of the things I'd want to, my first time considerations? So are there, what kind of medicines would I choose? What kind of safety and standards are out there for retreat centers? Are they operating by any? Are retreats accessible financially or even physically? And even getting into like the trends, like what's happening right now, but also where are we going in the future with this? So that's a lot. Maybe we'll cover some of it, who knows? But I'd love to just dive in right now with our first question. And it's around preparation and integration. And, a lot of times we think of a psychedelic or a plant medicine experience as the experience itself. People talk about ceremony, they talk about the event. But in reality, there is an aspect of preparation that's very, very helpful, and then integration. And I guess my question is that helpful? In any of your experiences, do you see preparation and integration as helpful and as important for the experience? And if so, what's being done at your specific centers to support the full arc of that journey? And Carlos, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me to be on this, and it's so great to be with this cool group of people. To me, I call it inner environment, and I use that term to describe like all of the consciousness elements as well as physical and emotional elements that we always have inside of us. And optimizing the inner environment to me is a huge benefit to getting the greatest results out of the particular experience. And it's something that we know all the time. Like, I think probably the best example would be like an intimate relation with your partner. Like everything that leads up to the act, so to speak, is actually probably more important than the act itself. And to me, that is a great way of understanding, if you've never had a psychedelic experience, how everything that leads up to the experience itself has so much influence in what happens during the experience. And so just like we tend and fertilize and till the soil and make sure that the ground that we plant seeds in for our garden is as healthy as possible, preparing for a medicine experience like ayahuasca specifically is just incredibly important. So what we do at our center is I schedule a call just like we're doing now, like a Zoom call with each participant, and I go over all of their concerns, all of their questions, and I offer advice as to what they can do to optimize their inner environment. Ultimately, I'm trying to get to a point where they have a higher level of trust in the decisions that they made to attend the retreat, have a higher level of faith that the outcomes will be beneficial for them, and that they feel ready. I think that's probably the most accurate way of describing what your goal is when you're getting prepared for an experience, is that you want to feel ready.
What does ready feel like? And also, I just want to touch on one thing too. You said that the preparation that one does before the retreat is more important than the experience itself. That's like, wow. Okay, I just want to, because often I know when I first connected with plant medicine, it's like that the ceremony is it, the medicine is it. I'm whatever. I'm just going to kind of show up, but that's really radical. So I'm curious, what does ready feel like? Jacobi.
Well, yeah, it's funny when you mention this. It's I think still so typical that expectations play a huge role. And yeah, it's true that a lot of people think that actually the ceremony itself is the key component. And we've literally also had participants who somehow, even though we also have a preparation process with a call, and where people explore, like, is this the right time for me to do it? Do I feel ready? How is my anxiety around this whole experience? But people tend to think that the experience, the ceremony is it. And sometimes they come literally with, I would say, the wrong expectations of thinking I can just fly in, have my ceremony, and fly back to London to my busy life where I can just go on. But now I'll be, sort of equipped with a sense of like a mystical experience that I've just had. And then, of course, when they come on retreat, and sometimes it's that even the moment where they realize, oh, this is actually something different. There is so much more to it. And then I wish I had prepared better for this, because then I would be able to make much better sense of that experience. Because I think what Carlos said is really right. If you don't know what's going on inside of yourself, where you might hold some blockages, or on which why you might not be able to fully surrender into a process that is like a healing process, that already gives you so much pointers to work with and to make sense out of your experience, and then take that one back into your daily life, where your life is actually happening, and you're where you're actually being you're supposed to show up continuously after this, and just that experience is not going to do all of that for you. So I just want to pause there for a moment.
Yeah, now you're getting into the territory of integration, which is the other half of that. And I just, personal share, I think I was working with plant medicine for about 10 years when it finally dawned on me, oh, integration's important. Like, it's kind of like sad to say it, but I was like, oh, wow, otherwise you keep kind of going back to the bar. Melissa.
Yeah, I just want to definitely agree with that. And, one thing that we really do try and frame the experience towards for people is that we want to expand the container of what the healing experience and the healing process is. And so, something that we tell people, especially as it relates to preparation, is when you make the commitment to work with plant medicine or even psychedelics, but in particular plant medicine, it starts working on you. And, you'll see that as people start to prepare in the sense of, for example, removing heavy foods, removing excess sugar and salt and things as part of their diet that are, guidelines by the healers that we work with. As they start to remove these things, perhaps these things have been comforts. Alcohol, substances, highly processed foods, really intense media. We realize that these can be actually distractions from the inner work that we're trying to do. And so as you really start to prepare, these emotions that you've been essentially distracting yourself from can start to surface. And so the process really begins when you start the preparation process. And, in our case, we say that it really starts when you make the commitment to do it. And as these things can surface, this is an amazing opportunity to hold that space for yourself, to really start showing yourself compassion and really start to understand, okay, these are the things that are coming up for a reason. This is maybe what I'm going to be working on, and I can start holding that compassionate space for myself now. And another thing I just wanted to mention about preparation was the intentions versus expectations. We mentioned a little bit about expectations and sort of getting those right. And something that we make a difference between is having expectations, which is essentially can be trying to control the outcome of the experience or how you get to the end result that you want. Whereas intentions can be more like, this is my compass, not my map. This is my North Star. It's not how I'm going to get there, and being really open to the process unfolding organically and letting the medicine do that. And then, of course, leading into integration, which is also, this work is only as good as what we make of it. So that's absolutely something that we focus on at Soltara too, and is equally, if not more, as Carlos mentioned, as important as the experience itself.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm wondering, what specifically are you doing at Soltara to help people with integration?
Yeah, so we collaborated with clinical psychologists because we understand that we work within the Shipibo tradition for the ceremonies, and a lot of people that come to us are going back into a very Western, global Northern world. And so we want to help people bridge that gap between this very mystical, indigenous experience that's very closely related to nature and indigenous traditions, and understanding that they're going back into the real world. So we actually wrote a book. It's kind of a journal. It's meant to be very accessible. It was in collaboration with psychologists that essentially follows a psychological treatment framework, but adapted to the ayahuasca experience. So taking people through coming, setting intentions, checking in with yourself, your ceremonies, navigating different things that can come up in ceremony, shadow work, reframing, different types of tools that can help you. We have workshops that relate back to this book throughout the retreat, and then sort of a build your own integration plan. So we're very much in the framework of empowering people to find what works for them. So we offer tools, we have workshops, we also offer sessions with psychotherapists, both individual and group. We have an online community, and we follow up with 3 months of resources on a weekly basis for people that sort of track the arc of integration. For example, 2 weeks after your diet may be changing again. And so how do you check in with your body and make sure that you feel nourished, and what works for you, and really personalizing that integration process, because that seems to be the way that people will really stick with it, when they feel a sense of agency and autonomy over their process. So we really try and focus on empowering the person within themselves.
That was a good approach. Thanks for that. Thomas, I'm curious to hear about your journey with psilocybin, and also how on earth could you possibly have prepared?
Mhm. Actually, the preparation part of that was a fairly big factor in my overall experience. Um, we were trying to follow the Johns Hopkins protocol fairly closely, and what that involves is a number of therapeutic talking sessions prior to the actual experience, and of course a number of integration sessions following that. So for me, the preparation started a number of weeks prior to actually having my experience, and a lot of that involved the expectation of what was possible with the session, and what is reasonable for an expectation. Um, Again, stressing, of course, the importance of this isn't an experience where you just take a magic pill and everything is all happy and good after that. You have to really identify the areas that are challenges for you, because um, it's reasonable to expect that that is exactly what's going to be coming up in your session. I like to think of this whole preparation and intention as sort of like one of those revolving doors they have going into a hotel, right? If you do your preparation and your intention, when you step into that, you are going to be able to follow through with the experience and probably get the most benefit from it. But if you're one of those people who steps into a revolving door and you stop and look around, you're going to have an experience, but it isn't necessarily going to be a positive one.
Okay, so like momentum.
Yeah. Well, if you step into one of those revolving doors and you don't have a plan, if you don't have your intention and an understanding of what's going to happen, it's going to hit you in the behind, and you're going anyways, but you won't necessarily get the therapeutic benefit out of it. For my experience, I definitely had a clear understanding that You could have some very challenging things come up in there. You could have some, what some people call a bad trip is what I would call you have some challenging things that you need to work through, and being able to understand that you have to embrace those things before you get in there and experience it is really important, because it takes so much of the unknown out of that.
Right. So that whole notion of bad trip is maybe just lack of preparation and lack of safety in the experience. Yeah.
I really believe it is. I mean, are you going to potentially experience some unpleasant things? Well, I mean, if you're like me and you've got, anxiety for some valid reasons, or if you've had life traumas, of course you're going to experience some things that are challenging. You've had challenging things in your life. But this is really a way of being able to, instead of avoiding those things as we normally do, it takes your ego out of the way so that you can actually address those things. And if you're ready to embrace it, then yeah, healing can actually happen.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. I'm curious about, for somebody who's watching this, and this might be they've never done plant medicine before. There may be anxiety about that, fear, uncertainty, unknown at least. What kind of things are important for people to consider before doing their first plant medicine experience or retreat? And what kind of obstacles might people encounter in that? Jacobine?
Yeah. A lot of things have already been touched upon here. I find it like really with these different perspectives, it's already so beautiful. Yeah, what can I say? I feel very strongly about this preparation of, first of all, you have to be ready in the sense that you feel truly called to this. So not being recommended by a friend, oh, you should do a plant medicine retreat, or oh, I'm so deep down, I've like sunken into a hole. I don't know how to get out of this. This is going to be my remedy. This is going to be the thing. So you have to realize that there is actually work to do, and that you'll be, taking, if you decide to go on a retreat, that it's basically the first stepping stone in your process in the rest of your life. And then I think what Melissa also just said was so beautifully, like you prepare for it, like in a physical way by avoiding certain foods. You start reading certain things. There are so many books. Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, is a really good one to get a sense of what this work is all about. You start to talk to people. You start to get to know the facilitators. So really preparing your mindset and being ready on different levels. I think it's and then you still feel the call, and you still feel that sense like, yes, I want to go there, and I want to dive in. We also we work with I think, intentions and expectations, and literally expectations about also how does this whole thing work in a practical sense? Like, is it a ceremony? Is there ritual involved? Or is it going to be like more clinical with psychologists around who are going to guide me and hold my hand? What if people come with like really, understandable questions like, what if I start crying? What if I start screaming or shouting? Or what if I face these dark sides within myself? That how do I do that? So at our center we have like what we call the flight instructions, where we kind of give people practical instructions on how to handle all of those different situations. Also, what kinds of psychedelic experiences are there? What are the different types of experience you may come across? Is it going to be emotional? Is it going to be visual? Is it going to be a nada experience where absolutely nothing seems to be happening to you? And then how do you how do you see that? How do you perceive that? And then what comes up for you? Is it disappointment, or what if I don't like the music? People often ask this question, and all of those things we basically coach them a little bit so that they they are ready for those situations and those encounters, and actually know how to bring that back to themselves and ask them that question. Oh, interesting. Why does this come up? Oh, I feel a frustration, or I feel a disappointment here. How interesting. Where does that bring me? So what's the gift in this situation that I didn't quite expect? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole piece of medicine. Medicine itself is, the obstacles we see is the medicine sometimes. Carlos, I'm curious to hear from you. There's so much. There's so Jacobian just talked about the plethora of experiences that we could have. In addition to that, we also have so much choice. There's ayahuasca, San Pedro, DMT, Bufo. And he says, and those are just the ones that we know of. And you're very connected to many, many other medicines. How on earth do we choose? Does one person know what medicine to work with, and let alone what teacher to work with or what location? Any insight into that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd go back to my first reference, which was about intimate relations. We are already familiar. I hope actually that everyone has become familiar with having an intimate relation with another person, and there's a lot of discernment in that process. You meet someone, you feel a connection to them that draws you into deepening a relationship with them, or finding out if there is this possibility for relationship, and eventually that may lead to the confidence that that this is something that you want to do. And it's very, very similar, I think, in the sense that, well, personally, I do believe that these plant medicines, specifically ayahuasca, but also the other plant medicines, are like, they are beings. They are conscious beings that we can get to know and communicate with and learn to build relationships with. I literally do feel that way. That might sound out crazy, but that is how I look at things. And so it's a very real reference for me. Whereas you meet, you come across the plant medicine, and you most likely already have a feeling about it. There is already like a resonance or a lack of resonance. There is some connection where someone says peyote and you're like, what's that? And then you hear about it for the first time, and you may be like, whoa, that sounds really cool. Or you may be like, whoa, I don't think I like that. Right off the bat, just the same way that we are either attracted or repelled or neutral to the people that we meet, there also is, I feel, a noticeable feeling that makes us want to learn more about a particular medicine or not. And that plays itself out to the point where we start looking for the place that we can have that encounter, and then the same process again, where you like see what the centers that are offering that particular plant medicine look like, what they feel like to you. Hopefully you are attracted in the sense from like seeing how they appear, to then reaching out to them, actually having communication with them, and then getting a deeper feeling about that. And all of that is like a step-by-step process that eventually allows you to hone in, so that you are like, this is the place where I want to go to have this experience. And if you don't feel that way, it's not really something. I think Jacobian said it when she was like, it's not something that you can just do because someone told you to. You can't really bring someone to it that doesn't feel like it on their own. So it's really a personal, process to figure out what is the best path forward. But what I always say is that whatever resonates most with you will always be the best path forward.
Yeah, just to add to that too, I think that's really important, understanding what is resonant with you and where. Certainly I feel a sense that a lot of people who call or come through, they're actually feeling a call to work with ayahuasca when they contact us at Soltara. And there's so many factors going into it. And I think this is a really important question because a lot of times people just don't know what to ask, don't know what questions to ask or what metrics to judge different centers by. And so, something that we say is, really, really do the research of, for example, what are the safety protocols? What is the intake process like? Is it a medical intake process? Is it a psychological intake process? Are you talking to a psychotherapist? How does that look? Who's holding the ceremonies? Are the maestros trained in what tradition? For how long have they trained for? If there's facilitators, how long have they been training and in what lineage? For ayahuasca particularly, it's, questions like what is the brew made of? Are there any admixtures in the brew? And why are there any admixtures? If there are, what's the purpose of them? What's the group size? What's the ratio between the people holding the ceremony, the healers, the facilitators, and the group size itself? What is the overall group size and what is that ratio? Are there other medicines intermixed? Are there multiple traditions intermixed? This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but why is a good question to ask. And does that resonate with you? And is the process for honoring each medicine in and of itself maintained? What does that overall container look like? And then, of course, what is the integration support? What is the follow-up after that? Who is really going to be holding that space for you before and after, as well as during. So just wanted to kind of pass that along because we do get a lot of questions of people just not really sure what to ask when looking at different centers.
Jacoby.
Yeah, if I could just really wonderful. Yeah, these are all super important aspects. And I just want to add also, like zooming out a little bit and looking at the landscape we're in, I just want to highlight it's very much early stages and there is such a limited availability of legal and safe settings where you can work with legal plant medicine in the world. So yeah, we are literally now talking about a few places in South America where the work with ayahuasca and San Pedro and mushrooms is allowed, but most people travel there specifically. We are working from Amsterdam in the Netherlands where we have psilocybin containing truffles as basically the only legal option, and therefore we work with this. But yeah, and in addition, and I also see that this also brings, this is an important factor. And in an ideal world, I think we would have, different settings where people could choose from, like medical, therapeutical, more wellness-based, and different programs that suit to the different needs of these different people. And right now, that is all sort of, yeah, it's often from an outsider's perspective, it's like, oh, where can I go and find healing? But I see that there's a need to diversify so that we can really cater in a safe and a contained way, and make sure that people are really held in the way that they're supposed to be supported from the place where they're coming from. Yeah.
And as more centers come too, it's important to understand their reciprocal relationship to the movement, the tradition, the origin and the roots where, potentially these medicines come from, which may or may not always be the case depending on the psychedelic. But, understanding, like you were saying, like as this picture kind of zooms out and gets larger, it's like, what's the relationship of that place to the larger movement and, the roots of where these medicines come from, if that's applicable.
Absolutely. I would like to know also about how your experience is, because ayahuasca, for instance, it's such a special medicine, and it's very much, I think, rooted in the Amazon. So for me personally, it feels very different if I go into that ayahuasca space. Just my personal experience, it feels like I'm doing something foreign and exotic and mystical that I somehow, with my Western mind and the way I'm sort of like, coming from a culture where individualism is high and we're so cognitive, and then to sort of understand that kind of realm, I feel that can be challenging. And then here in Europe, we have a history of other plant medicines, but it's been also, well, of course, it's not. It's been abolished, and we've had the church and Christianity coming in, and so it feels like we sort of have to reinvent a new paradigm and create something that really fits our current society and our current ways of living and thinking. But we also don't want to appropriate something that comes from the Amazon or that comes from our ancestors or other cultures, and that we just impose that upon the work we do now, just believing that that's the best way to heal people and to help people. We really want to make sure that we acknowledge what has been and take those lessons and those teachings, but being respectful and paying it forward from those who's been like literally inventing this from so long ago. Yeah.
I want to touch in on something we've talked about here, which is just there's a growing number of retreat centers, plant medicine centers, and at the same time, we talked about its nascent stages, right? This is the beginning of this. With a larger number of centers evolving, and it's kind of supply and demand. The more people that are interested, the more centers there will be. How do we manage safety in that? How are we currently managing safety? What kind of standards need to be in place? Like I would expect Thomas's, he had probably with Johns Hopkins, like the incredible set of, and I can imagine all of your centers as well are holding a very, very high level of standards and safety. But I'd love us to have a conversation around what is needed, and are there even governing, what is needed for one to feel safe in this experience, and then what kind of standards, are there any standards in place? Thomas, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for my experience here in Canada, to use the psychedelic as a treatment, I had to get what they call a Section 56 exemption. So psilocybin, it's an illegal substance here in Canada still. So I had to apply to our Minister of Health in order to be able to use it. And the exemption has some specific criteria that have to be met for safety. So, where is it going to be stored? It has to be used in the presence of a medical practitioner. The dosage of it has to be sort of a known quantity. So there are these elements that have to be in place here in Canada just to get an exemption in the first place. And I really like what I'm hearing about these other centers at different places in the world where we've got, the medical theme that goes along with it in terms of the safety. But I also like that they have incorporated in the traditional aspect of these, because people have been using these plant medicines for thousands of years. I think it's kind of silly as a Western culture that we haven't taken more advantage of this long history of usage, because indigenous peoples who have been using them in safe ways for thousands of years obviously have a pretty good handle on these things. And I'm very happy to hear that they are incorporating these as elements in that.
And that would be our hope, as well, that those that level of integrity is very high on centers. Carlos, I'm wondering to hear from you. Just what do you feel? I know you and I have talked in the past about safety and standards, and I'm curious, is there any movement current day among, because you're in Peru, anybody can just buy ayahuasca local, and become an ayahuasquero. And if I was a tourist, I would have no idea. How do we manage that? What are you currently seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there was an effort to organize the centers, and unfortunately, it kind of failed. It was very, very hard to get that group of people with so many different ideas and such a wide spectrum of like operational model, where there were literally like some people that had a couple people come to their house and do a ceremony, and then centers like the Temple of the Way of Light, which are having thousands of people go through their center each year, and get them all like in the same room as if we were all doing the same thing. And to be totally honest, I kind of predicted that was going to be a struggle, and I never even attended a meeting, although I did send some of my staff on my behalf to represent us to those meetings. But I do hope that like somehow that could be put together. But I also recognize the Ayahuasca Safety Defense Fund, which is something that ICEERS started, and they put together, I felt like, a very impressive list. And of course, they're taking a legal approach to it. So they're basically assisting with people that might get into legal trouble while or for facilitating or leading ceremonies. And so they created basically something from a legal standpoint that could demonstrate safety. And it was my recommendation to that group that they adopt that set of guidelines. But you're right. I mean, when it comes down to it, the centers and across the board are operating according to what they themselves feel like would be best. I know, like, our center is very unique in that we have a training program. So we offer a training program for people that feel like they want to become a facilitator. And then we kind of have this process that eventually leads to, like, my original staff that worked as facilitators eventually got to the point where they themselves were maestros that led ceremonies. Of course, that took about 10 years. But and so all of like our staff members are essentially apprentices somewhere along that path. And I hesitate to like even call them facilitators because of that. I think that's a great model to have. We take time off from our operations so that our staff can continue their training with the maestros personally. And obviously, that lends itself to them being better equipped to treat the patients or the passengers or participants that we have on our programs. But I guess I'm going to fall back on the same thing that I said, which is that we are always making those decisions in the relationships that we form, and if you meet someone and you choose to go on a date for them, for example, there's risks involved in that. And, it's not like a secret that a lot of people have stories that didn't end well when they had an interaction of that nature. And so we never really want to let go of the idea that we don't need to do that. Even if we're talking about a Western medical doctor that does have to follow all of these regulations, there is still a very important component, which is that we do resonate, that we do feel trust in the person that we are deciding to allow into guiding us through a healing process, regardless of what the medium is, regardless of what that platform is. And so, I do feel like it's always important to make sure that everyone is making decisions based on what they do feel according to all of their faculties is right. Of course, ask the questions, make sure that you feel that way. If you have doubts, then don't take a chance. And that's something that I would say is across the board as a relationship advice.
Thanks for that. That's great. It's kind of a yes and make sure that there's safety and standards in place, and also trust your gut. Jacoby, and I'm wondering, Synthesis is a legal psilocybin retreat center. Um, you know, what obviously to be a legal center in Holland, like that, you're going to be jumping through massive hoops. What have you guys done in terms of what standards are you setting for the industry, knowing that it's so nascent?
Yeah, true. I think all of us, like all of us in this field, we are pioneering in the sense that there is no framework, there is no code of conduct or an ethical framework that we can just subscribe to and say, hey, this is how we do it, and it's internationally recognized, and it's sort of, there is no label or certification for this. And yeah, we've come across lots of challenges actually since we've started out, and it really takes constantly actually a close look at your own behavior and holding yourself to the highest rigor in this work, and always thinking like, what could go wrong. So yeah, we have a medic on site for all of our retreats, even though and I think this is also thanks to the good preparation and all of that, but he never had to go into action, but somehow you want that person to be there just in case. And I think it also starts with medical screening, or just the screening of your participants. Like, we would really love to help everyone, and especially the people who need this type of healing most are typically the ones that we had to reject. Just before COVID, when we were just running our retreats, we had to reject about 40% of all the applicants because of the medication they were taking, because of the condition, because of their current state of or lack of support. So we just didn't feel safe welcoming them into retreat. But it's really painful because, yeah, this potentially might help them, but you also know that this could potentially harm them. So then you have to make that choice there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of gets into the realm of accessibility, which is what I wanted to jump into, which is, okay, you're turning down 40% of applicants, which is very responsible to do, but also tough for the participant, I can imagine. But maybe that's the right thing, because obviously it's not the right medicine for them at that time.
Yeah, and no, what I want to add to that is also, it's not just that because we felt the plant medicine is not the right pathway for them, but also because our infrastructure might not be set up well enough for these people. So they might need a one-on-one session with extended amount of therapy instead of, the retreat model of 3 or 5 day retreats with coaching and personal guidance and breath work and sessions all around it. But we can sometimes see that might not be enough, or that might plunge them into a deeper do more harm initially than it would do good. So we've been like really careful from the beginning, and now looking forward to actually opening up to people with different conditions such as depression, and we build a specialized program for them. And then also, in addition, yes, I do really hear what Carlos said about the intents and to bring the people who facilitate in this field together and come up with some kind of code of conduct and hold ourselves to the same standards. And it seems like it's a really difficult pathway to walk. And there is the Guild of Guides. I think they're also originating in the Netherlands, but working internationally now to come up with such a code. I've also know of the North Star Ethics Pledge, which is an international initiative. So, and then MAPS has a good protocol. So there are good protocols, but this is just like really the first steps that we're all taking as a collective here. And there's a lot of alignment that needs to be done. I'm also not sure if it's ever going to happen on that level. I feel that probably everybody will start having their own code of conduct and ethics and their own standards. Yeah,
it definitely has to evolve itself into being. Yeah, it's so there's I'm curious about accessibility too, just as we're on the topic of accessibility. So I know in the other traditions, like in the Buddhist tradition, they would often offer dana, it's called, like by donation, or they're in that they're wanting to remove all obstacles for people to connect to the Dharma, even financial ones. And this is a movement, right? This is not just there's a massive amount of healing potential, but if you're sick, or if you need healing, rather, it's like it doesn't matter how much money you make. You need healing. It's irrelevant to the money. So how or are any of your centers, and Melissa, maybe you can answer this, like, what are you doing in terms of allowing access for lower socioeconomic status people to do the work that they need to do in their life?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have a scholarship program for our center. We have actually two scholarship programs, one general and one BIPOC specific, because it is really important for us to help to extend these medicines to people who are ready and committed to doing the healing work, but may not have the financial means to do so. Operating in Costa Rica is very different from operating in Peru. There's a lot more regulations that we have to abide by. Just to kind of touch on the safety thing, we're actually in the process of getting a clinical health permit, which has a lot of regulations to go with it. Like, we have a local doctor, we have everyone go through a medical checkup before and after their retreat. We work with psychologists and psychotherapists. And so, just as, for example, it may be more expensive to, work with a top-notch surgeon in a field. We want to make sure that the healers that we work with, which are top-notch in their field, are paid well, and we're supporting their families and their communities, really. And the facilitators that come in, everybody needs to be paid for their work. So there is an element of you're paying for a high quality healthcare system. But that being said, I agree with you that there is also there are hard questions that we need to ask ourselves as a movement, which is, how do we make sure that healing is accessible for all people, and particularly when it comes to groups that may not have, maybe underrepresented in the movement, or maybe underrepresented in the way that their healing is able to be accessed. And so, so for us, we have a scholarship program. We're also, we offer financial aid. We offer payment plans. We give away probably too many discounts, just depending on different situations. We also collaborate with the Heroic Hearts Project, which is an amazing organization that I highly recommend if you feel called to donate. This is an amazing organization to donate to. They work with veterans and connect them with different forms of ayahuasca therapy, just depending on kind of what fits. And so we work with them to be able to offer options for veterans who are suffering from PTSD and other mental illnesses to help heal as well. So we also partner with Chacruna, and which is the Chacruna Institute for Psychedelic Plant Medicines, and really try and give back to the institutions that are supporting accessibility for more people in this movement.
Thanks, Melissa. Sounds like you're doing a lot of it. I'm guessing other centers are following suit, and because I'm seeing some nods across the board here, so on some head waggles. Okay, cool. But I want to get into. We only have actually about 5 minutes left. It's amazing how fast time goes when we're doing this. But I'm curious. I'd like to hear, briefly from everybody, how working, because we've all worked with plant medicine. So I'm just curious to keep it personal here. It's like, how has working with plant medicine changed your life and transformed any kind of relationship you've had, whether it be a relationship to yourself or your partner, or even the world itself, or even the nature of reality? Thomas, I want to ask you to join in.
Boy, that's a big one. For me personally, I'm going to look at the contrast between using plant medicines versus the more traditional antidepressants and things. So for me, the antidepressants were something that uh, changed the way I was feeling at the moment, or more specifically, dulled what I was feeling at the moment. Whereas the plant medicines had a way of changing the way that I think about things. So, in terms of myself, of course, my main source of anxiety is my cancer and the impending end of life stuff. And what the plant medicines have done for me is to take all of the clutter, the useless thoughts related to that, the what ifs, you know uh, the doubts and the uncertainties, and it quieted all of that stuff in my head. So it really brought me to a place where I have this quietness and this serenity in my head, so that instead of my life being focused on, is that pain that I feel, an intestine that's about to rupture, or is that a new tumor or something like that. And instead of thinking about those sorts of things, I'm now able to focus on, you know, um, spending an afternoon with my family, uh, you know, uh, making a nice meal, visiting with some friends, um, living really in the present moment, very much experiencing that, cup of coffee or a really good meal, the company of a friend. So focusing on the parts of my life that actually are important and mean something, as opposed to all of the junk and clutter that we seem to have in our lives that robs us of our really valuable time.
Thank you, Thomas. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for waking us all up on the call here. That's great. Carlos, just one. You got time for just a one-liner? How working with plant medicine affected your life?
It's the most profound experience of my life. I'm just 1,000 times more blessed than I ever possibly could have imagined. And I recognize how important my own responsibility is. My own ability to respond to my experiences is more important than the experiences than themselves.
Thank you. Jacoby?
Yeah, for me, in terms of relationships, yeah, definitely also the relation with myself, self-care, self-empowerment, just really appreciating what I am and what I can become rather than, look at it from the other side and feeling like, criticism and so. And also just how I go about relationships. So I just being vulnerable. I think before I start working with plant medicine, I just didn't really get it, what it means to be in relation with someone, with people around you. And I think I saw it as something more like what it's supposed to be like, what it looks like from the outside. And it ended up being like kind of transactional or sort of not fully embodied. And yeah, I learned to really like sort of just be in contact and in connection and building a relationship, that it doesn't matter like what you said or did that particular day or that particular time. You're actually building something that is sustainable and that connection remains there. So yeah, it's a huge gift.
Yeah. Thanks, Jacoby. Melissa?
Yeah, it really helped me to understand the interconnectedness of all things. And so I think that feels like, for me, my relationship to myself is a conduit for my relationship to others and what I can offer the world as a reflection of all of it, of all of love and how we are all interconnected. So the things that I do is a conduit for that reflection of the divinity in us all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll add that into it. It's heartbroken love. Yeah, for the whole thing. It's a really beautiful, heartbroken, beautiful situation we're all in. So, and just surrendering to that. It's been my experience, like just letting go. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in on the panel and connecting in and connecting into the heart as well, and sharing so much of your wisdom. And I'm going to encourage you to keep on keeping on. We're just at the beginning here.
Thank you everyone for watching this video, and don't forget to put like to the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and thank you, plant medicine.